I found myself in Barrydale, a small town on the Route 62, 250 kilometers east of Cape Town. I'm here to tell you about a tiny little fish species called the Tradouw Redfin. It's a critically endangered species whose last remaining habitat is the river that runs through this town. Join me as we find out what is threatening the species and what we can do to protect it. The Tradouw Redfin, sometimes known as the Barrydale Redfin, or if you're scientifically inclined, the Pseudobarbarus burchelli, is an endemic fish to the Huis and Tradouw Rivers. It's no longer found in the upper Tradouw River or in the pass, or consistently found, making the Huis River its last stable habitat. We know that the uppermost population of the Tradouw Redfin is found at the Donkergat Pool in a pristine natural catchment area. The river and the redfins then make their way through the agricultural land and into town, where the last stable population group is at the Department of Water and Sanitation flow gauging station, which is also the Barrydale Cellars. This gauging station is a weir across the river, and it serves as a barrier to the invasive fish species, the bass, which actually predates on the redfin fish. So as an engineer, I actually don't know all that much about the redfin. So to help me learn more, I've joined the Kristiansen Conservancy on one of their monitoring days. They use something called the South African Scoring System, or SAS monitoring, to understand the ecological health of the river. They also string a whole lot of nets across these ponds to monitor what type of fish species are actually in this pond, what size they are, and how healthy they are. I'm joined by Aileen Anderson, who's the General Manager of the Kristiansen Conservancy. Thank you, Aileen, for taking the time to walk me through the SAS monitoring that you're doing. What is SAS?
SAS is a system where we use the macroinvertebrates in a river to give us an indication of the health of the river. Macroinvertebrates are really just the creatures that live within river systems. And when we're doing SAS, we are looking to see for the presence or absence of these different creatures. And each creature will have a different sensitivity score based on how tolerant it is to different levels of pollution.
You've been monitoring the system for several years. What have you noticed between the different scores amongst the different sites and also your fish netting?
So when we SAS, particularly at the cellars, when we notice that the redfin have those parasites, we're trying to do more research on the correlation, but we believe that those are linked to the water quality in the river, because we only get those downstream of town, and we correlate that with the SAS scores that are much lower at the end of town. Compared to when we're upstream here, we get very good SAS scores, and the redfin look healthy and strong, and they don't have any of those parasites.
You've mentioned that you're getting curious results when you've monitored after a flood event. What have you seen?
They are naturally prone to floods and drought, so these rivers are naturally would have highs and low flows. But what we've observed is that in these upper parts of the river, if we have low flow for a while, and then suddenly we get a flood, and we wait a bit and then we measure, we get very good results in terms of the health of the river, because that's a natural freshening of the river, and the invertebrates like that and their habitat, and you'll get good scores in terms of the diversity. What we've noticed downstream below town is when we get flood events, often the scores are much lower than we would expect. And we're not sure, but we infer that there's potentially a lot of things flowing in from town, maybe from septic tanks, possibly or agricultural use, but a combination of those that then would reduce the score. And that is also could also well be contributing to the parasites on the redfin. It's always very difficult to determine causality because there could be multiple sources of pollution. So for the redfin's perspective, it's both the base flow and the quality of the water. It doesn't help if you have a lot of water and that water is of poor quality too. Then you're going to get problems like parasites, or you might start to get die-off of the fish. Well, the other factor is a lot of water. If you don't have enough water, then the fish is not going to be able to survive. So the fish needs good quality water and enough of it to be able to move freely up and down the river and to be able to breed and survive in these systems.
There are a lot of unknowns about what exactly is contributing to the critically endangered status of the redfin. But we do know that there are two major threats to the species. The first is base flow, so how much water is actually making its way through the river. And the second is water quality. We know that in the natural, pristine catchments, the redfin are really healthy, but as it goes through town, the redfins start to decline and they start to have parasites that we find on their bodies. When talking about base flow, one of the major uncertainties in the system is that we don't know how much is in the river and we don't know how much we're taking out. While invasive alien plants in the wider catchment is a problem, the real threat is when they're in the riparian zone. So here's a stretch of river of the Haze that has black wattle, Port Jackson, and even some beefwood, which are using up the water that's in the river that actually should be contributing to the base flow, making sure that the redfin habitat has enough water to thrive. Luckily, the Conservancy is already here taking a drone survey to work out just how much work it's going to take to remove these alien plants from the riparian zone. Barrydale's got a bit of a peculiar sewage system in that the town centre is serviced by septic tanks, where Smithsville is serviced by a waterborne or piped sewage network. This means that poor management of a septic tank in town can lead to wastewater entering the Haze River directly. You can see by the debris around this manhole that this sewage system is frequently blocked and overflows. This sewage enters a drainage channel, which is a tributary of the Tradouw River. This has a major negative impact on the habitat of the redfin. The wastewater treatment works is well undersized and actually can't treat the incoming quantity of wastewater from the town. This means that the effluent quality used in the irrigation fields is actually sub-ideal at best. While I've just painted a pretty bleak picture, the Grootwatersbos Conservancy has already done a lot of work in getting sponsorship from the WWF, IUCN, Chevening, and others to implement a number of activities that both improve the base flow and the water quality of the Huis and Tradouw Rivers. They've also done a lot of groundwork in getting community support to protect the habitat of the redfin, and they've also made sure that local, national, and provincial government entities are involved and supportive of this work. To improve the base flow, we're approaching it from two directions. The first and the most actionable is to clear this riparian zone of invasive aliens, and that is already underway. The second direction of approach is a bit more of a long game play. Myself and Aileen have managed to secure funding to set up a water monitoring system to understand how much is in the river and how much is abstracted. I, as a water engineer, am going to use this data to better understand what we're taking out of the system and how we can balance the needs between the agricultural sector, the urban demands, and the environment. Thank you to the Chevening Alumni Programme Fund and WWF Nedbank Green Fund for sponsoring this system. Improving the water quality is a slightly more challenging task. In an ideal world, septic tanks wouldn't overflow, pipes wouldn't block, and the wastewater treatment works wouldn't look so dismal. But the good news is that the municipality is well aware of this issue. They're in the process of upgrading the wastewater treatment works, which will do a huge amount to improve the water quality that's used to irrigate these fields behind me. This is the same drainage channel that enters the Tradouw River, so any effort that is made to improve the water quality from this area has a positive impact on the redfin habitat. While the Swellendam municipality is busy with the wastewater treatment upgrade, the Grootvaardersbos Conservancy has worked hard to collect seedlings to propagate these locally indigenous plants to plant in areas where they can passively treat water before it enters the Tradouw River, thereby protecting an extended part of the redfin habitat. Barrydale is a small town, but protecting the redfin is not a small project. There's a lot to do to protect this habitat, but it's encouraging to see that so much work has already started. What's interesting to me is that this tiny minnow is the catalyst for activities that have a much wider reach than just conservation. Through this project, we're able to create employment through alien clearing activities and restoration. We're able to make an engineering system more efficient. And at the very least, we're able to get community cooperation for a common goal. As a water engineer, I find it quite fulfilling that my skill set can contribute to this larger whole. Thank you for Chevening Alumni Programme Fund for sponsoring this video.